thank you so much for this opportunity to fellowship with other Christians and just get to learn more about one another and how we can help each other just grow your kingdom in this world. And please open our hearts to the message that Jimmy Adams has for us today and just how that works and applies into our work lives. In your son's name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
All right, so Jimmy has a very interesting life. I was reading all about it, and he has been working for a while, so he's got a lot of experience on how to kind of maneuver through what we get to deal with every day. Jimmy Adams has been an active member of the Gideon's International for 15 years and attends Fellowship of the Woodlands Tomball campus. He is past president and current board member of the Christian Business Luncheon since 2002. He has been married for 45 years to Sue. Let's give Sue a hand. They have three children and 9 grandchildren. A graduate of Texas A&M University in College Station, he attended school on a football scholarship and earned a degree in chemical engineering in 1970. Jimmy began working at his father's paint manufacturing company when he was 8 years old. His first job after college was an engineer with this Superior Oil Company, and he was promoted into the oil and gas sales department in downtown Houston. He has also worked part-time in real estate sales, owning his own company. In 1973, he joined his father's paint company, working in all areas, including but not limited to research and development, manufacturing, plant and other supervisory roles, including direct supervision of 20 salespeople in all areas of the United States and several countries. He sold the company in 1981. In 1984, he started Samuel Properties, a small real estate company marketing commercial properties. In 1985, he started American Coatings, a protective coating industrial paint company in a 5,000 square foot industrial small park located here in Tomball, Texas. The American Coatings grew to be one of the top 50 privately owned paint companies in the United States, which is amazing. Out of all the United States, I'm very impressed. This company specialized in oil field refinery and chemical plant protective coating. American Coatings was sold in 2014, and then Jimmy continued to work with the company for another year under contract as they transitioned. In 2015, he started and is currently working at his son's company, J.B. Adams Medical Development. He says you're never too old to learn and you're reaching a completely new field. His wife calls him Colonel Sanders. I'd like to welcome Jimmy Adams.
Thanks, Christine. Thank you for coming out. We've got one gentleman from LaPorte. We should clap for him, too. Good to have you. My talk today will be kind of concerning small business. On stock companies, I couldn't even tell you how to start with those companies. But I'd like to start a quick testimony at first, to give you a testimony of my life and how the Lord came into my life. In high school, I had a truck accident. I don't know if any of you have been in any of those, and ended up turning up upside down. My brother and I was about the age of 16, and at that point, our family went to church periodically. My dad was starting a paint business. My mother was teaching school, and there wasn't much time for. Really, on Sunday, Dad usually fixed things. It was, they were always working. And what happened in the wreck is I got to a neighborhood, my brother and I got to a neighborhood, I was able to pull him out through the windshield. And I didn't think too much about it till I was at a neighbor's who called my father, and I said, Dad, we've had a wreck. We can't drive the truck. We need you to pick it. I'm a 16-year-old kid. We need somebody to pick us up, take us home. So he said, Jimmy, go out by the truck and wait, and I'll come and get you. And so I never forget his face when he came. It was just like he was astonished, and the truck was upside down, and when I look back at it, there seemed to be no way that we could have gotten out of it. And my brother had a bump on his head, and that was about the extent of it. So we were so fortunate, and time went by, and I thought about why was I saved? You know, how did we get out of that thing? How did we not get hurt? And I realized that maybe the Lord had a plan for my life. I don't know if y'all have had any moments like that, but I started putting a lot of thinking into it, and I started attending a church regularly. We were Methodists at the time, wouldn't even miss a church service. And at that time, it was all new, and I just couldn't get enough, and I wanted to learn more about the Lord. And because normally, before that, when I went to Sunday school, I didn't listen too well. So the Lord got my attention, and went on through life. From that time, I had some very good fortune. I played some sports in college, and I had an opportunity to go to several colleges on football scholarship. Ended up going to A&M. That's where I met my wife, and on a blind date at A&M. When I was at A&M, there were no girls going to school there. So I got pretty lucky, I guess. So we went from there. That's one thing that the Lord did for us. At A&M, we had a pretty good football team. We had, some of you read the Junction Boys, maybe. That was about Bear Bryant. We had all the Bear Bryant guys that went to Junction that played for Bear Bryant. They were our coaches. And our big claim to fame in my sophomore year was that we actually played Alabama in the Cotton Bowl with Bear Bryant as the coach, and we defeated them. Kenny Stabler was a quarterback at that time. I had a Southern Baptist roommate that I was very fortunate the Lord put me with him, and I learned that there was an old teacher that had been at the college. Now it's like some things are happening today. I guess A&M was founded somewhere around 1879, and when you get around 1962, they took Christian classes or Bible classes out of the public schools. And Prof. Smith, he was a diehard. He felt like the Lord was leading him to save Texas Aggies. So he and his wife, he was not able to teach anymore. They had a house that was close to campus, and they would invite us in for Bible studies periodically, and I would go with my friend. That's how I really learned what it meant to be saved at that time, and he brought me to the Lord. He was the type of guy who was very exceptional in that he knew Hebrew, and you would ask him a question, and he would say, well, turn to Luke 13:1. What does that say? He would never tell you the answer. He'd let you read Scripture and then let the Lord speak to you to give you the answer. And he'd say, well, what does that say? And you'd say, well, this is what it says, and you'd read it. He said, okay, now turn to John 1:3. Now, what does it say? Now, what do you think the answer is? So he also allowed us, he had a small church, and because we had won the Cotton Bowl that year, my Southern Baptist roommate, Jerry Campbell, the Lord had spoken to him and said, we got a bunch of guys together. There was about 15 or 16 of us, and he said, this may never happen again. And, we thought, well, we're going to tear the Southwest Conference up. We're going to win from now on. But anyway, we heard it. And he said, we have a real great time now that we've done so well that we could use this for the Lord. So what we started doing in Houston and Dallas, and this had a big effect on my life. Houston and Dallas, we started sending guys up to churches and particular events, to schools mainly, to try to form a Fellowship of Christian Athletes. Have y'all heard of Fellowship of Christian Athletes, most everybody? We had one at A&M too, and it was a pretty strong one. So what we did is we would go and give our testimonies. A lot of us had never spoken before, so we would go to this country church that Prof. Smith had. There might be only 10 or 12 people that would come there, way out in the country, and we'd be able to start speaking to try to learn some skills. So when we went to the high schools, we found out later that those Fellowship Christian Athlete organizations began to perpetuate themselves, and a lot of them are still going today. The Fellowship of Christian Athletes was a real strong influence on my life. There were some key people that were young men, probably in their 20s at that time, but they stood up for the Lord. The two I remember in particular is there was a man named Ray Hildebrandt. Probably you don't remember this, but there was a song that came out called Paul and Paula. So old, probably in the 60s or 50s, and it just sold millions of records, and it was a one-hit wonder. That's the only thing that he ever did, and nothing else hit the charts. So he had lived in that lifestyle with drugs, with a lot of drugs at that time, and he was a great witness. We had a deal on campus where people could get drinks, alcoholic drinks, and people could go in and play an instrument at their own. It was kind of like a talent show. And I can remember one night we sat in the crowd and we were talking and that sort of thing, and he played the guitar, and we heard several people go up and use God's name in vain and curse, and I guess they thought that was big to do that. And so he had waited for his turn. He said, "I'm going to go up there." So he got up and he began to tell his testimony about what he had done and about this record, and how the Lord he'd been in different situations and didn't want any part of it, and that he had gone back and worked with the Fellowship of Christian Athletes. And you could hear a pin drop. He played a Christian song, and it just made you so proud that he stood up for the Lord that way. And I thought, well, I'd like to be like him. Then we had another guy. He was maybe you've not heard of him. His name was Paul Anderson. Have anybody heard of Paul Anderson? Well, at that time, he was the strongest man alive. He had beaten the Russians. The Russians was always a big competition. But he had deadlifted somewhere around 6,000 pounds. And what he would do is he'd come to campuses, high school or college campuses, and we would build a big table, I guess maybe 15 or 20 foot long, and it would be pretty structured where he could get under it. And he'd usually ask for the biggest guys in the crowd to come in and sit on the table, and then he'd lift them up with his shoulders and turn them all at one time. And he actually, can believe this, he started developing his body and doing weightlifting at an early age. And in those years, it was sinful to do that with his church. So he'd go down to the barn and lift weights. But he was a natural, but like a lot of the big weightlifters, they don't look like weightlifters. They've got a lot of weight on them, but they need that to lift heavy mounts. And what he would do is at the rallies, every rally that we would have, he would come and talk. And at some rallies, he would actually break world records for lifting just there in the organization where we had the meeting. And he was always in his statements. He would say, "Some people say I'm the strongest man in the world." He said, "I can't go one day without God. How about you?" And it would always get you to thinking, that what a great God we have, and that if this guy's so powerful and he depends on God, I need some of that too. How many of you have, getting back to the topic, how many of you have been through a merger or an acquisition? Okay. Well, that's good. I just wrote down some reasons. To me, there's some multiple reasons why someone's going to sell a company or a company's going to be sold. A lot of times we don't think about what the motivation is. Why did they sell it? A lot of times we think, well, the owners just want to take a vacation or something like that. But I wrote some down here that maybe this was true of your situation. One, maybe no plan for succession. A lot of times an owner will feel like he doesn't have any family that's going to come back into his business, so he's not going to continue with the business. Or the owners may be getting older and wanting to phase out and not actually die in the office. Financial problems, that can be good or bad. I've seen situations where a company grows too fast, maybe you have, grows too fast and it's starving for cash and people can't run it anymore. There's no source of financing, or just not enough business to make it go. Maybe all been there too. The economy is a reason. Remember in 2008, we had a downtime in the economy. We were wondering where the bottom was. I was in the paint business at the time. We lost 30% of our business, but we did not lose a single customer. Just the end users weren't using product. Sometimes economy of scale, where a company, they have a large plant and they've got maybe only utilizing half the plant, and they can see that they can buy another company and fully utilize their people. That happens a lot. And then today, you see this with a lot of stock companies, I guess. Sometimes it's almost a total loss of business, such as Blockbuster. New technologies come along, and if you don't keep up with the technology, you're out. And a lot of times these people phase into other businesses, but sometimes they go broke. Some companies buy other companies because they see it's a faster way to grow, or it's a way to diversify their business. And then sometimes the owner just has a lot of pressure. He's just tired. We live in a litigious society now, where many times lawsuits are all around, and people will sue you for a drop of a hat. I learned you don't have to be, it doesn't matter if you're right or you're wrong in a lawsuit, you still have to pay the attorneys. So they make their money. My first experience with a sale by my employer was in the family business. When I went to work with my father, he had bought his last business partner out, and he was a small company, probably around in the paint business. He's probably a $2 or $3 million company per year. That's what the sales were. And through a period of time, he had originally started working for Exxon when he came to Houston, and he was in their paint plant, so he knew a lot about paint making, and that's what helped him. We were in the paint manufacturing business. And lo and behold, in 1976, Exxon decided to diversify themselves and get out of the paint business. They were making their own paint. They had their own product called Rust Band, their own trade name. And so they were looking for someone to buy the company in the United States and buy the other portion of the company in Europe. And they decided not to come to the large companies because they felt like the antitrust people in the government would not let them. So they started looking at smaller companies. And we had sold paint to a lot of their refineries and had good standing with them. So they came to us. And when they came to us, it was through an Italian company. The Italian company was going to buy the whole thing, and then they were going to sub the Western Hemisphere portion of it to us. Well, that was a good thing to us, but it wasn't a good thing that the Italian company wanted to end up owning 51% of us. So we told them that we weren't interested in the deal. And at the end, Exxon decided to go to the Italian company by themselves and have them buy the Eastern Hemisphere operation and us to buy the Western. And when we bought that, it was not an easy thing to decide what to do. I was in on some of the negotiations. But what we were doing is what seemed to be a good deal could run you out of business it's like the economy sometimes, where something's done to the economy and the repercussions are totally different than what you'd expect. We were able to, it was about $40 million worth of business in the United States, and we were told that they would not guarantee us any business with any of their divisions, but that we could buy it and have their trade names and have the formulas. So this was for $250,000, which is really a small amount today, but not knowing what you were going to get into, we decided, my father decided to go ahead and make the deal. And in that, he had come up with a deal where, in order to encourage Exxon to buy the same coatings that they've been using for 40 years, that we would give them a 5% rebate each year on the amount of product they used. So it gave some of the divisions an incentive to go ahead and use the product, and we did that for 5 years. But we had a really tremendous growth. When we bought the Exxon business, we were $6 million a year in sales, and in 1981, which is about 4 years later, we were like $24 million a year. And what that did, I mean, it sounds great. What it did was we went from, like, I guess probably 40 people to 150 people. In that, we had a unionization push to try to unionize the plant. The thought was that we would be non-profitable and not be competitive if we allowed that to happen. My father fought that. Then we had a couple of lawsuits. They were kind of unique situations in that the problems happened with Exxon, but the Exxon chemical had changed some of the formulas and hadn't proven them out. And when they given the business to us, so we were able to escape it. But we came real close to that. And I don't know if you know too much about the paint business, but there's anywhere from 5 to 35 ingredients in a can of paint. And normally you have some people that they're pretty well equipped, but they're not college grads. They're low pay employees compared to the whole picture. And sometimes you'll get bad raw material, so you've got to check your raw material coming in. But there's just so many things that can go wrong. And when you think that you're running the ship, you know the Lord's running the ship, because there's too many things that can happen. Have any of you been in businesses like that? Yeah. Well, based on all that, I guess after about 5 years, my father was tired and could see what was happening. We were a pretty respectable sized paint company, but a lawsuit could wipe us out. And if we were real small, you know, a lot of people always say they can't get blood out of a turnip. You all heard that saying? So they won't bother you. And if you're huge, then you can self-insure. But if you're about the size of us, you know, a lawsuit could wipe you out. So I knew he was going to sell. He had kind of hinted around about selling the company. At the time, I was a sales manager. And, you know, it's like any other sale. If you're family, you don't know anything about it. Just, you know, it's always a surprise. When it happens, it's a done deal when you hear about it. So I had a lot of trouble with that in the beginning, and I found myself, still working for the other company. But when it first happened, I would go home my wife can tell you, for about 30 days, and I would just sit down on the couch and gaze out, and I was thinking about, you know, what I was going to do, where I was going to go, you know, what the next move for our family was. So Sue and I had discussed a lot of things, and we had, I'd had a real estate broker's license years before and decided that, well, you know, maybe I should go into the real estate business. And sure enough, that's what we all decided to do. I had a couple of partners. So we started that, and we had about enough cash to last us a year, and then we were kind of gone. We had to make it go. And little did we know that the savings and loan debacle was going to hit, where interest rates were going to 18 to 20%, and a lot of savings loans were going bad, and really you had trouble selling a piece of property in most cases because people were giving them away at 50 cents on the dollar and things like that. I don't know if any of you were in that business then, but we were having trouble making a deal, and we were so embarrassed the first time. What we thought we would do is put a partnership together. There were a lot of those going in where you would sell 5% of a piece of land, and that particular man or woman would buy the 5%, and they would hold it, and then when you sold the land, they would get 5% of the profits. So we tried to do that. We had one piece of land that we had bought just by putting down a down payment. We had it in closing, and we went out. Of course, the first thing was to go to all of our friends, and friends were great, and they did buy some, and we ended up coming close to closing on the deal, and we found out that we didn't have maybe half the people we needed to make the deal. So I never will forget how embarrassed I was to go back and talk to these people and tell them how we had not made a deal for them. Well, the Lord works in mysterious ways that way too, because I had my tail between my legs, and I went back to, without fail really, to our people, and they would say, "Oh, that's fine." They said, the insurance man that we went to, he said, "Jimmy," he said, "this is the first time I've ever received anything from one of these partnerships." And he said we had put their money in an interest-bearing account, so we made them, got their money back, and we also made them a few pennies of interest. So it was a good thing, and nobody really was embarrassed. We were able to, they knew what was happening, and we were able to go on to the next one. There were several times during that year that we came up against some really large deals, which are huge now, but 1984, and they were talking about the Grand Parkway. And the Grand Parkway was going all around Houston, it's 99, and it was going to be 240 miles long, and all that road frontage, it had to be valuable. All we had to do is get a hold of some of that and sell it. We'd be in good shape. So we found one piece of land. It was around 8,000 acres in Dayton, and it was owned by an old rice farmer that had come over from Sweden, and it was going to have 12 miles of frontage on the Grand Parkway. Well, we thought the Grand Parkway was coming, in a few years. This was 84, so you can see kind of how it goes. So long story short, we had a buyer that was $100 an acre away from what the owner wanted, and we couldn't make a deal. So we continued to work on things, and what would happen when we get close to a deal, something would happen at the end. And our prayer had always been that, that we would know, God would let us know when it was time to move or put us in the right direction. Well, we abandoned the real estate business because it was a no-win situation. We decided to go back in the paint business, and that was something that we had known. So my partner and I started in 1985, and we started in a warehouse, about a 5,000 square foot warehouse, and thought we were going to take on the world. I was like the story of Jesus, where there was a guy that was blind from birth, and Jesus rubbed sand on his eyes and told him to get in and stir the waters and be healed. And I kind of felt like that. I got into testing the waters, and my eyes opened. I had just really started my first business from scratch, and there were a lot of things I needed to learn. I was not near as smart as I thought I was. So we got going very early, and we found out that we made a good product. A lot of things happened with my family, and that's where a wonderful wife comes in a great need, because we had a profit sharing plan with the old company, and we didn't make any money for about 2 years. We thought that, well, all we needed to do is sell about $1 million worth of paint, and we'd be, rolling. We'd be doing really good. And when we were selling $1 million worth of paint, we could just barely pay our employees. So, and then we found out, working with an accountant, those numbers really did mean something. And so we pretty much used up all of our money with Sue. Spent a lot of days mowing the grass when I was working late at work. I would work night and day, and we actually went out and sold the paint during the day, and we'd make it at night. And I had all my family behind me, and it got so bad we always tease around about it that one night one of the kids wanted an ice cream cone, so we decided to go to the Dairy Queen. We didn't have much money, so we bought one ice cream cone, and we all ate it. So anyway, we knew the Lord was in it. We dedicated the business to the Lord, and He continued to work. One of the things we did is, as we grew, we bought, we didn't buy, but the marketplace chaplains, we had them come in. We've had them talking at the Christian Business Luncheon before. They were able to, we had some Mexican-speaking people, and we had kind of a tough time reaching them because we didn't know any Spanish. So they had people that spoke Spanish as well as other languages, and they came in, and we wanted to make sure that everybody was confronted with the Word of God and that they had a chance to be saved. And they were very helpful on that end. They were so dedicated that I still remember one lady that was having cancer treatments, and she was going 2 days a week. She had a family, and she was going two days a week to talk to people and try to bring people to the Lord. We're going pretty good in our business until, and we had become like one of the top 50 independent paint companies in the United States. And then one night, July the 10th, you'll never forget these things, of 2010, a young man, 23 years old, set our plant afire. And some of you probably saw it on the news. It burned for 3 days. Sue and I, we got a call, about 2 o'clock in the morning from a neighbor. And he said, Jimmy, he said, something's popping over here. I think your plant's on fire. It's funny now. And so I started getting my clothes on. I said, Sue, we got to go. We get over there. And then before we get our clothes on, we got a call from Tomball Fire Department. And Mr. Parr, he said, Jimmy, he said, we're over here. He said, I think it's your paint plant's gone. He said, it's so hot we can't, all paint's flammable, most of it. He said, it's so hot that we're not going to be able to put it out. And over a period of 3 days, we got on our knees and prayed that nobody would be hurt. And over 3 days, we were back and forth, watching the fire, trying to, be encouraging. But it was terrible just to drive out there and see it. All the 2920 was blocked off, and that was really a low time in our life. I knew God was at work. I kept getting a message about all things work for good for those that love the Lord and are called according to His purpose. The Lord kept giving me that, and I'm thinking, He must have something in store, especially what I had learned so far. When something drastic happens in your life, the Lord usually has a plan. He knows things 10, 20 years ahead of time to prepare people or prepare you for what's going to happen. And we're tested, and if we come through it, He makes it worth our while. Next day after the fire, we got all of our people together and we said we thought the Lord wanted us to rebuild. We're going to try to get back on our feet. Our guys were thinking we would take the insurance and just quit. And so the first year, what had happened, I guess 2 months before the fire, the Lord had kind of prepared that. My dad had an old business partner that he bought out. That's how I got into my dad's business years before. And I'd known him since I was about 8 years old. He's 84 years old, and he had a small paint plant near Hobby Airport. And he was, I didn't know it, but he was about to go broke. I had a call from him one day, and he had some machinery that he wanted to sell. And I said, well, it was pushing me pretty hard, and I said, well, I can't use this expensive piece. It was $30,000 or so, but I said I could take the $25,000 one and we could probably use it. And so I was thinking, I'd send him a check or something, and he sent somebody over the next day to pick it up. And I said, what's going on over there? He said, well, we're about to go broke. And I said, well, what's going on? And the owner was Dad's old partner. He was down in his back. He's 84 years old. And he was the only salesman they had. If he didn't sell it, it didn't get sold. So what we did is we started operating in his plant. After the fire, he invited us over. And I guess it was a good thing. Lord blessed us that we helped him, and he helped us buy the piece of equipment. But when the fire came, I had 6 or 7 calls from him, and I knew he'd heard about it on the news, and I didn't want to talk to anybody. And without my wife, I don't know how I'd gotten through it, because she was very helpful. She didn't say a whole lot, but neither did I, but it was just a support. And what happened was, basically, we started operating out of his plant. He said, bring all your people over. He said, I don't want to see you go out of business. He said, bring all the equipment you need. So we did that. And we started operating at his place. And we were able to, that year we were able to go from 0 sales to $10 million of sales, which is quite a jump. Otherwise, when you started from scratch, it'd take forever. But we did learn how good our paint was. We had a lot of people that found other sources till we got up, and then they started purchasing from us. But I was over there about the second month, and 2 men came in the office, and I said, who are these guys? Did he have an appointment with you? I was talking to one of the guys there at the paint plant. He said, no, I don't know who they are. And they said, we want to know who signs the checks. And the guy I was talking to said, well, Horace Thomas signs the checks. And he said, well, where's Horace? And he said, well, he went home. He only works till lunch. He was the partner that, was down his back. So who signs the checks? And they said, well, Janice signs the checks. And they said, well, where's Janice? And he says, well, she's in this office over here to the left. So they go, and we continue our conversation. And Janice comes back in about 10 minutes. And the guy I was talking to, his name's Tommy Lightfoot. He said, Tommy. She was white as a sheet. She said, these people say that they're going to shut us down by Friday if we don't pay our taxes. And so then we started kind of finding out what we were getting into. And what we found out is that they haven't paid South Houston property taxes in about 3 years. And they were in arrears on that. And then we also found out he had some kind of deal with the owner of the building, and he hadn't paid him for 10 months. So here we were looking at having to shut the business down and go out of business again. And I told my partner, I said, it's one thing to lose product or have a fire and get back up, but then if you've got to lose your source of supply again, I don't think our customers are going to go along with it. So what we did is we ended up making him an offer to buy him out. And little did we know when we were going into it that it would help him as well as us, because I remember really being angry about the fact that we didn't get all the info, that he was in that kind of shape. But in a paint plant, it's different than a lot of other businesses in that it's highly regulated, and you have to have air permits, and you have to have permission from the state to be able to make the products, and you have to lower or track your emissions. You know, if you're small, you're not emitting much, but if you get larger, you're emitting quite a bit. So he already had that where we were, and we were able to move in and continue to operate. And in the meantime, we continued to draw out plans. We had plans for the new building drawn, and we were ready to go. We were really approaching it with prayer and forethought, we thought, and we went to, especially we went in person with, we had a consultant that did all the air quality stuff because a normal human being can't do it. And most of these consultants, they had worked for the state before, so they know how the rules are deciphered, and it's like many government things, they have a lot of hidden meaning that when you read it once, you really don't catch it. And a consultant, can draw that out. So we went to Austin, and the people knew our position. We had a permit that was left for about 2 or 3 more months, and we did not have to get a new permit, but we had to get a new permit for building the place. We had built in '96, and we had to start all over on it. So we got that with the fire inspector and the state, and started working on that for air emissions and all that. But what had happened to us, we went down there and they said, okay, we know that a lot of people lost their jobs. What we're going to do is put you on the fast track, and we're going to get you, we want you to file for this new permit. And pretty much forced us to do it. So we decided we had to do it, and it was probably the right thing to do. And as things went on, it took 3.5 years to get a permit, and that was on the fast track. So we operated, what we did is we bought 2 FEMA trailers from one of the auctions, and we operated out of the old site with the offices, with the sales and salespeople, and then we made the paint in the plant near Hobby Airport. We were able to get, I remember going to the auction and looking at 40 or 50 trailers, and they were all torn up. They had fist marks through the walls and everything, and there was 2 or 3 of them that we liked. I was able to get 2 out of the best 3, and so that was a good deal. And they were $4,000 or $5,000, where normally you'd pay $45,000, $50,000 to buy a new mobile home. So we operated out of that and continued to work. And I got a call one day, and it was from a broker that sold paint companies. And they had been down to see us. They were out of Wisconsin. They came down about 10 years before that just to greet us. They knew we were a new company starting out, or fairly new, and we had just made acquaintances. And so this guy's calling for a follow-up after about 10 years, and he says, Jimmy, he said, we're coming down in your area. We'd kind of like to come by. You guys are getting in your 60s now, and we think you might be ready to sell, and we want to talk to you about it. And I told him, you haven't heard? And he said, no. He said, I haven't heard. And I continued to tell him the story, and I said, I am looking right out my window at a slab. We had cleaned everything up, and but we were left with the slab because we had found the slab was about 85% intact, and we could use that when we rebuilt. So I said, you really don't want to come down here, see us? And he said, well, okay, I'll come back some other time. And so I waited 2 or 3 days, and he called back, and he said, look, he said, I've been thinking about your business, and he said it might be more valuable without a building than with a building. And I said, well, how can that be? And he said, well, there are a lot of companies that aren't fully utilized, and they could take that business, your business, and go straight to the bottom line with it. And I didn't even want to talk to the guy, so I told my partner, I said, look, you talk to this guy. I was in position to rebuild and get going again. You talk to this guy, and he's coming in 2 weeks, and just let me know what he says. And sometime during that time, I don't know when my wife got a message, but Sue said, Jimmy, he said, you're going to sell your business. And I said, how do you know that? And she said, the Lord told me. And I said, well, how did he tell you? Well, I can't tell you. So I said, okay. So we went on like that, and we decided to let the people market us. And they came back with a good offer, which we thought was good. And it was here, I'd been through some of these things before, so I wanted my people to be taken care of. So we sold to a family business, some people out of New York, which were mainly in the rail coating business, and they wanted to get in the oil and gas business. That was big for us because they wanted to diversify. And little we know the end of the story, but what they did is they bought us. We worked for them. We had a contract to work for them for a year. And then as an owner, sometimes when you're working for the company you sold to, it's not the same. So it's not the challenge. So it was pretty lackluster for me. And I decided to just try to do something else. And what we found out after about 6 months after I had left the company is that these guys having this family business, had been in business since 1942, they sold to a mortgage bank in New York. I mean, not New York, but in Dallas. And really, we didn't think things would come around like that because we thought we were leaving our people in good shape, which they will still be in good shape, but it's a little more difficult to work with the brokerage companies if any of you have done that. So through everything that we've done, that I've done, I know you may have some similar stories. I can't believe y'all would have as many as I would have, but I guess when I'm older. I'm 68, so I got a lot of stories. But through it all, the Lord has guided us, and like I say, I knew my dad's business partner since I was 8 years old. Little did I know that I would ever be using his facility, or he would be the thing that helped save us with the paint business and stay in. The Lord had ordained that or made that happen. And little did we know that we had anything to sell. So the thing I've learned, I guess, through all these things is, and I was on the computer yesterday and I was reading about some kind of merger of a couple of book companies that happened a couple of years ago. And you could tell people were experienced and people were non-experienced with buyouts because there was a blog. It was going back and forth, and some people were scared to death, and the other people were saying, we'll just have to, nothing will happen for a while. We'll wait, and the Lord's in control. But those people, I think, had it right. What I learned through everything is that God is always in control, and He will let you know that He's there. Also found out owners and financial people think they are in control, but we know different as Christians. Through all your trials, you find out more about yourself. Sometimes it's scary. I found out, I guess, when we started the company, we had just moved into a house, and we had a big note, and then the interest rates were like 18%, so that's what we were stuck with. And my wife kept saying, well, let's sell the house. And I had put a lot of cash in the house. And to sell the house, everything was going on distress sales. Houses similar to ours would be appraised for about half of what our house was worth. So I felt like I was in a bad position in that I had put a lot of money in the house. So through prayer and just hard work, I don't think the Lord gives you anything. He gives you the ability to do those things. But through all that, we were able to survive and get through it. It wasn't, sometimes we didn't have the best of credit, but we worked hard and the Lord brought us through it. I found out about myself at that time that I guess I would go to the bottom trusting the Lord, because there is no other way. When you turn it all over to Him and you think you're living according to His purpose, that you're going to be rewarded, or you're going to see a difference when you persevere. I found you can expect to receive attacks in businesses, not just as as you do in your personal life, but you see them in your businesses just like your personal life. When you stay steadfast and honor God, there will always be a huge blessing at the end of the journey. And there are many things that happen that are unexplainable, but then you realize it's supernatural from God. At our company, I've told people before, we used to have a habit of praying for people when we needed someone, like accountants and even truck driver and salesman. And we were out between Tomball and Spring off of 2920 in a little industrial park, and I'd have trouble giving you directions to it and you getting there. But when we needed those people, they'd show up at the door. They would wonder, if somebody had told us about us, or they had heard about us. I was at my office working on a Saturday one day, and we needed a truck driver in the worst kind of ways because we had lost our truck driver, and we'd been out about 2 or 3 weeks, and I think we had a salesman driving the truck, and the guy came in, and I thought he was wanting paint, and I said, "Yes, sir, can I help you?" And he said, "Well," he said, "you're going to think I'm crazy, but I heard about y'all, and I've been driving a truck for this paint company, and this guy cheated me on my wages, and I'm looking for another job." And then an accountant, this is really a good one, I got a resume in the mail for an accountant. At the time, we had an accountant, and he was in poor health. So I said, "Well, I'll just keep this resume. You never know." And we'd been praying for him, so I thought, well, maybe I'm doubting God because I'm keeping this. But I said, "No, I think I better just keep it. I think that's the right thing to do." Well, about 6 months later, we lost the accountant that we had. He died, and that might have been 8 months. And I looked at my desk, and there was a resume. So I called this guy, and I said, "John," I said, "you're going to think I'm crazy, but you remember you sent me that resume? It's been a long time. It's been about 6 or 8 months." "Oh, yeah." I said, "Well, you're going to think I'm crazy, but, do you have a job?" He said, "Oh, no." He said, I was doing some temporary work, and it's over today." And he said, I need a job. And so then when he came to work, he found out that he said, when my partner asked me what I was going to do after I got through this temporary job, I told him, "Well, I don't know, but the Lord will provide." So, things happen like that. You have that in your business too. Also, it's easier to know that you're not fighting your battles alone. You know that you have your family with you, and you know that you have the Lord. I just kind of summed it all up with my feelings about mergers and acquisitions. Is our relationship with God is different, just as probably all different, just as He has made us different. We know Him by His works, just like He knows us by our works too. There should be some works. He expects us to honor Him and fulfill His purposes while we are here. How lucky we are to have fellowship with Him and have Him direct our paths in our businesses. Thank you.